Hey, how you doing? My God, it's cold out there today. So I've just been into the garden and picked some potatoes, and I'm going to prepare myself a meal to cook on the old wood stove.
First off though, I'm going to strip off a couple of layers because it's so hot in here, and then I'm going to show you new developments on the off-road expedition trailer build.
It's a whole heap different inside to outside. According to the temperature, we're down below 8 degrees outside, but it's nearly 30 in here because I've got the fire going. Still, mustn't grumble. Right. So I've been beginning work on the off-grid camper trailer that I've been promising you guys for the last few weeks. There's been a lot of behind the scenes searching and researching, trying to find the right parts at the right price, but not knowing the measurements and sizes of so many of the things I'm going to be using. It's been hard to make a start until I've actually got all the stuff in front of me. So that's been happening over the last 3 or 4 days, and I've made some components. I've bought some components. Do you know what that is? Choco. Grows on a vine. Many people just think they're a weed, but what I do is I use them for a great number of things. They're a bit like a potato or a cucumber, but not as watery as a cucumber. But they're the kind of thing that you can slice up and put into anything to make it go further. They grow prolifically. I've got a vine that grows down one boundary of my property, and it's a good 20 or 30 yards from one end of this vine to the other, and it just produces more of these chocos than I can eat. So unfortunately, a lot do get wasted, but I can't give them away. People don't know what they are, and they won't eat them. They won't try them because it looks different. They don't want to know. Anyway, back to the trailer. Yes, I've been in touch with a company in Australia called Nolithane, who make urethane plastic bushes. They've been around for about 40 years now, and funnily enough, I remember them when they were brand new on the block. They make these wonderful off-road and performance bushings for all types of vehicles. They're the red plastic ones that you see on performance cars. Who knows what that is? That's right, it's a leek. Okay, it's the national vegetable of which country? Come on, come on, come on. You can do this. You know. You're going to phone a friend. Okay, phone a friend. Go and see what you can do. It's called a leek. And they're beautiful. Love them. The trailer. Yes. It's going to have a composite body shell, which will weigh not an awful lot. The whole body shell is going to weigh about 150 pounds, 160 pounds, which in the scheme of things is next to nothing. I've just got my tyres. They arrived on a courier yesterday, and honestly, the rims and tyres and the big brakes that are going inside them will be the heaviest components of the entire build. It's just something I'm going to have to work around. Years ago, I used to build sports racing cars, and I understand an awful lot about what unsprung weight can do to a vehicle. and I can't get around this. It's just the nature of the beast. When you've got a very, very light vehicle, be it a trailer or a race car, you also need to have very lightweight wheel and tyre assemblies, because as they move up and down on the suspension, the momentum of heavy wheel and tyre assemblies will kick the lightweight vehicle around. I can't get round this. It's got to have off-road tyres. Off-road tyres are big and heavy, and so are the mag wheels that carry them. So it's not going to be a race spec type vehicle. It annoys me a little that I can't get everything just how I want it, but that's just the way things are. There are a few compromises. One of the great things in my life is being single. I'm allowed to pretty much do what I like. If I want to put a knife in the bench, I can. If I want to work on suspension units in the lounge, I can. I've got one here that I prepared earlier. This is one of the A-arms and the shock absorber assemblies that is going to go into the trailer. I brought it inside last night so that I can play with the geometry and work out where mounting points and where the arc of travel will be and just how this is going to work. So you can't do that if you're married and you've got a wife who is ruling the house. The other thing is, on these suspension arms, the bushings for the ends, these will get welded to the end, and these nolithane plastic bushes that I mentioned earlier from Australia, they get fitted in either end, and a cross tube slides through the middle, and that gives me a pivoting point for these arms to work on. And I'm very proud that most of this is going to be made from scratch. There are items that I've got to buy, like tyres and plastic suspension bushing components, but so much of this build will be made by me. Mushrooms is like peeling grapes in my opinion. Throwing away perfectly good little matter. So there we go. That can go. Water in there. A little bit of sea salt. That can go onto the wood stove for a slow cook while I brown the meat. This thing here is called a trivet. It's designed so that pots can be put onto it on a stove and they will stop the boil. It will just turn it down to a simmer because it's not in contact. I want this to boil. I'll take this out for a wee while. Hang it here. Okay. Hang it here. And when it's boiled, I'll put the trivet back under it. Now here's a pumpkin that I pulled out of the garden a couple of weeks ago and I haven't had a chance to get into it. So now's the chance. Pumpkins are another thing that I've got all over my property. When you've got this many seeds and you don't throw anything away, it's very simple for me, and I've got lots of places where I can plant things that can just quietly sit. Space isn't at a premium. that smells good. God, I do love pumpkin, don't you? Right, so those will go and get washed and dried, and next year they'll get sprinkled down the bottom of the garden by the compost heap and provide me with another probably 8 or 10 pumpkins per seed. So it really is quite prolific. I don't know why people, in fact I do know why people don't grow their own food. It's because they've been pushed into smaller and smaller domestic units so that councils and governments can make more and more money out of more and more people in smaller and smaller spaces. It's pretty horrible when you think about it, that we are being treated as a resource. Stock units, for example. I do feel sorry for those of you who live in the States at the moment. Already food prices are climbing for you because your cereal crop and your soy crop is virtually non-existent for next year. The flooding in the Midwest has just been catastrophic. Mainstream news isn't telling us anything about it here in New Zealand, but I don't get my news from the mainstream. I get my news from some really, really good YouTubers by the names of BP Earthwatch, Suspicious Observers, Dabu7, Mr. MB333, and Marfugal. What's Marfugal's name? Marf. Yeah. Now, Adam Marfugal from Marfugal TV. He's somebody that you can rely on to keep you up with what's going on in the world with no bias. The whole truth and nothing but the truth from that young guy. Marfugal News and Marfugal TV on YouTube. Right. Quick tidy up, and then I'm going to put a jacket on and I'll take you outside and we're going to have a look at some of the bits that I'm gathering together for the off-grid camper. Right, let me find a jacket and a hat and we'll go outside and have a look at some stuff. Right. So these are the new wheels that are going onto the camper trailer. The rims are second-hand mags from a Ford Territory. The Ford Territory is an SUV, 6-cylinder SUV, about the size of a Jeep Cherokee. That is an Australian-New Zealand thing only. I don't believe they're in the States. Way better than a Ford Explorer. Out here we call Ford Explorers exploders because they are just rubbish. But the Territory has an Australian designed motor in it, and they're quite a beast. They're not a true off-roader, they're an SUV, they're a constant four-wheel drive, but they go well. So those wheels, some big muddies, and what else have we got? We've got the suspension that I showed you inside. For my build, that's my chassis components, and over here are my body panels. These body panels are short offcuts of the composite paneling that I use for other builds, but they've been either slightly damaged or they're slightly too small for me to use on jobs for other people. So these bits are going to get used up in my build, along with some pristine bits which I'm going to donate to the cause over here. And here's a roof rack that I got online from somebody selling. It's a Thule from Sweden. We've all seen those. That's going to go on there. That was, I think I paid $20 for that. Yeah, so we've got that. We've got a stove. We've got wheels and tires. We've got the panels. A lot of the stuff I'm going to be making, like oh, here's the off-grid adventure vehicle. Doesn't get taken out much, but with this trailer on, it's going to get used a lot more. I'm going to be going caving, gold panning, salmon fishing, trout fishing, surf casting off the beaches. It's going to be a great holiday. The windows, yes, now the windows for this camper. Why go out and spend $600 per window, which is the New Zealand price for new RV windows, when for $100 I can buy an old ute canopy and get 1, 2, 3 windows, $100. So these windows are going to be in the camper. I'll be making my own fridge because some time ago this was gifted to me. Has a very small dent and a chip just there, but aside from that, it was actually a new lid off a chest freezer, which will become the lid on my new chiller box, which is going to be made out of this paneling, because this paneling has the extra super duper insulation. Here's some shock absorbers and springs that I also bought online. They cost me $50, I think. They're an option if the others that I've bought don't work. Let's go into the shed and I'll show you where I'm up to on the bench. So here it is, the other one of those suspension arms, the bushing pieces that I'm currently working on, and the suspension unit mounts, which will attach like that, and they'll have a skid plate attached underneath them. Here's the stub axles. These ones have the fitting already on them for disc brakes, so I won't be using this actual stub axle. This is just here for me to mock up to get all the measurements and distances correct. I'm going to be using a stub axle that has a different plate in here because we're going to be mounting electric drum brakes, which are fully adjustable from inside the cab so that you can control your descent off-road down slippery clay tracks by over braking the trailer so that it can't come round on you. Great idea. Who here is old enough to remember the old Pioneer chainsaws? 100cc of 1962 grunt, powering my steampunk tandem. Well, the fabrication has started on the off-grid, off-road camping trailer. It's been very difficult to know where to start, whether to start by building the chassis or whether to start by building the body and then making a chassis to fit. When it comes to making the chassis, I had to decide how the suspension was going to be first, because there are considerations such as the weight, the ride height, the wheel diameter, the offset of the wheel, tyre clearances. I've had to purchase a great number of the components to begin this so that I could measure them and spend the time working out exactly what was going to go where. But what I've done here is made 2 mirror image A-arms back to back. The first one is fully welded. I've checked all of the angles to make sure that the 90 degrees are exactly 90 degrees and that everything is to within 1 millimeter of how I want it. And now I've clamped the other A-arm onto the top of it using spacers of double the thickness that I used to set up the first one, because this material here is a different measurement to this material here. To centralize it, I had to work out what would make an ideal packer to get the clearance here correct. And I looked at various types of nuts for nuts and bolts. I looked at 6mm and 8mm, and I found that 8mm nuts are the perfect measurement. So I've put 2 in there to double the clearance that I had on the other side, because we've got the 2 back to back. I've tack welded it, fully welded the first one, got everything square, everything's lined up, and squared once again. You can see that these are absolutely identical units now, ready to be welded up. I can't complete them because I'm dummying up using a disc brake stub axle assembly, which is the same dimensions, but I can't weld this one in because I'm not using disc brake calipers. I'm using electric brakes, because electric brakes can be adjusted for different off-road situations. So that can't get welded in. I've got to wait until the correct ones arrive. And the pivoting bushes, which are going to be welded onto here, 4 of them, 2 on here and 2 over here, they can't be welded on yet because they're being machined at the engineers to the correct dimensions to take the urethane plastic bushes that are going to be pressed in that they'll swing on. Over here on the bench, I've got a selection of rear shock absorbers and springs. 2 of them are from a Toyota Surf and 2 of them are from a Toyota Terrano. They're different measurements. You can plainly see that this spring is around double the strength of this spring. It's all to do with where they're mounted and the leverage on them when they're doing their job. If a spring is mounted directly above the axle line, it has to do far less work compared to one that is mounted part way up the arm, closer to the pivot point. So you can adjust the spring rate by pivoting the shock absorber in different places. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be putting mounting points here, here, and here, so that I'll have 3 different pickup points so that I can experiment with how the suspension rides. And should I come to the end of the range for the smaller shock absorbers, then I can move into using the larger shock absorbers with the same mounting points. So that'll once again give me 3 different spring rates. So I'm going to be able to experiment with a total of 6 different spring rates depending on the finished weight of the trailer.
Right, look away. Eyes. Masks on. Right, watch your eyes. Did I get you? Who am I, your mother? One last one. Watch your eyes. So at the moment, these two are identical. It's only when I start to weld the brackets on for the shock absorbers that they start to become right or left-handed. The shocks are going to mount approximately in line with this arm here, and there'll be 1, 2, 3 mounting points in order to get 3 different spring rates. Maybe they won't be quite that far apart. Maybe they will be. I'll have to do some geometry.
So I'm going to be doing some geometry on a large piece of paper and working out the arc that things move through, and I'll be able to work out the spring rate of the spring by counting the coils, the material diameter and the spring diameter. That will give me the spring rate, and then I'll be able to work out that spring rate through the leverage given by the swing arm, and that will then let me know which ballpark I'm in when it comes to setting ride heights, because we don't want the suspension to be completely topped out. It wants to be around 30% of the way through its suspension travel when it's at rest.
The next job is to create the brackets that the suspension units will be bolted to. They're going to be notched in to the axle carrier so that that will increase the weld area, thus increasing the strength. They're going to hang down below the arm quite substantially by about 2 inches, so I'll be putting a skid plate underneath them and angle back up to the underneath of the arm. I'll also make that structural. I'll make it out of some 1/8 plate, 3/16 maybe, 4.5 mil, and really get some strength into it.
Well, there we go. Another day, another dollar, as they say. I've come inside because it's so cold outside and it's dark. My dinner is here. Let's have a look. It's pretty well sorted. I'm ready for that. I don't think I'll even cook anything with it. Maybe have a slice of nice fresh bread. We'll get into it. Thank you for hanging out with me for a while I showed you the suspension and all that kind of stuff. And oh, Wales, by the way. Yeah, Wales in Great Britain. Yeah. Leeks, their national vegetable.